So to start off, provide a brief summary of your current role and your day-to-day responsibilities.
Yeah, so my current role is sports reporter and sports writer for NBC LA. You can see right there, Channel 4. We are the local news affiliate here in Los Angeles. NBC obviously is a huge company headquartered in New York City at the Rockefeller Building at 30 Rock. So we are the LA affiliate, and my role and daily responsibilities as a sports reporter and sports writer is it's such a fun job because it doesn't limit me by sport or team, but whatever's kind of the biggest thing going on in Los Angeles sports at any given time. So you and I, Lucas, are doing this interview here towards the end of February. We just got out of the NBA All-Star break. The Lakers just kind of retooled their roster by making a plethora of trades, and they now have six more players under the age of 28 on their roster, and that's kind of the leading headline right now. Russell Westbrook, the much maligned son that was cast away by the Lakers, has just been waived by the Jazz and is signing with the Clippers, the Lakers in arena rivals. So a day to day in this case would be like when they come back into action, which is on Thursday of this week, be sent out there to get interviews, talk about that. And then if there's any breaking news or something, be writing about that for all of our affiliates on NBCLosAngeles.com. We're just coming off of the Super Bowl. So I was out there in Phoenix covering the Super Bowl for NBCLA.com and NBCLA, doing live shots, stand-ups, for television for our audience back here in Southern California that wanted to see what was going on around the Super Bowl. There's a couple players, Juju Smith-Schuster and Ronald Jones on the Chiefs, who went to USC and are local LA guys. So people wanted to kind of know about them and get their story. So we went and did some features on them. And then also we have MLS season kicking off here in about 4 or 5 days, and the inaugural match for the opener for the season is being held at the Rose Bowl between LA Galaxy and LAFC, El Trafico, they call it out here. And that's supposed to be breaking the all-time MLS record for most fans in attendance for a match, which I think was 73,000. So the hope is they're going to shatter that record at the Rose Bowl. And I'll be out there for that. So it's kind of, Tiger Woods returned to golf over this past weekend at the Genesis Invitational, his tournament. So my day-to-day routine in short is to go to be at the most important thing going on in LA sports at any time, report on it for television, for broadcast, and then also if there's something important, write about it and tell stories that way for digital.
And since your time in sports, what would you say was key lessons that you've learned?
Yeah, I tell this from time to time. I get an opportunity to do things like this with Ron, seminars, webinars, whatever you want to call it, conferences. I've spoken as a guest lecturer at USC, at UC Irvine, many courses and college classes. And I've learned a lot, obviously, over the years, but what I would impart upon all of those people and all these conferences, and what I would impart to you is that the biggest lesson I've learned is that regardless in sports, regardless of whether you're a reporter, a writer, a cameraman, a beat guy, an editor, a broadcaster, whatever it may be, if you're in sports journalism, your job is essentially to be a storyteller. And when it comes to sports, we're telling the stories of athletes, players, coaches, executives, teams, in any way and different mediums. It could be telling the story of a team's journey to win or lose a championship. It could be the story of one particular player's struggle to get where he is. But at the end of the day, my like one piece of advice and thing I've learned is stop worrying about the sports. Like whether you, like, for example, I was just saying I was at the Tiger Woods Genesis Invitational, the PGA Tour event. Regardless if you know the vernacular for golf or the players or who's number one in the world and what's an eagle and how far the distance to the pin is, or what club they're using, or what's the name of the caddy, regardless of all those minute details, your job first and foremost is a storyteller. So you're telling the story of a guy like John Ram from Spain, and how he came out here and won this tournament and his journey to do that. You're going to tell a story of Tiger Woods coming back from just 2 years ago, a horrific accident right after this event in Los Angeles, fracturing both his legs and having a huge long recovery just to return to this exact event again. Those are the stories you're telling. So I would say my biggest lesson and thing I've learned is to not worry about sports too much and those details, and just focus on the storytelling. And the last thing I would say is, and maybe this will be a question down the road, but practice, practice, practice. So whatever you do it over and over and over and over and over again. It's the only way you're going to get really good at it.
And what would you say is one highlight that you've had during your sports career?
Yeah, so I like to tell people, first of all, I'm just blessed to be in a market like Los Angeles that has, I think we have something like 11 professional sports teams, if you include like the WNBA. I don't think any other market has that many. New York, where you're at, is probably the closest as far as all the professional sports teams that we have. And so being in this market, I'm blessed to be able to cover a bevy of different sports, professional sports. And with that, my highlight has been when I first became a sports journalist was, early 2014. I went to the World Cup and then was able to come see the Los Angeles Kings hockey team lift their second ever Stanley Cup trophy. So I was live in attendance to witness the LA Kings, an LA-based team, win the Stanley Cup. That same year, later that winter, I watched the LA Galaxy defeat the New England Revolution in LA to lift the MLS Cup. Just this past year, I got to watch LAFC, our new expansion team in MLS, beat Philadelphia live in Southern California at the Bank of California Stadium to lift their first ever MLS Cup. So that's 3 championships right there. I got to see the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Los Angeles Lakers in the 2020 pandemic year. The Lakers in Orlando in the bubble lift the NBA championship and cover that live as a sports journalist. And then just a couple weeks later, maybe like a month later, got to watch the Dodgers do the same in Texas in a bubble environment. That's 5 championships right there over 4 sports, I guess, professional sports. Got to see the LA Sparks do it in the WNBA. That's 6. And then who am I missing? Is that it? Is that all the sports? Like cover everything? Oh, the Rams. Sorry. And I just got to see the Rams win the Super Bowl at SoFi Stadium last year. And that was the final one. I had not seen an LA football team. Obviously, we hadn't had one that long win a Super Bowl. I've been to plenty of Super Bowls, but I'd never seen an LA team in LA win the Super Bowl. So that's my kind of highlights, my check off the list of 6 different professional sports championships, all seen live, all won by LA teams. It's pretty exciting.
That definitely does sound exciting. So you touched on this briefly earlier, but what's some advice you would give to college students or recent graduates who are pursuing a career in sports?
Yeah. So now we're touching upon the same thing. So it's part of the lessons I've learned. I'll say if we want to go back, I'm just going to combine lessons with the advice. So some of the lessons you learn along the way is it's okay to fail. You don't always have to be perfect. Just be good enough is what I used to say. That doesn't mean get into the habit of making mistakes and not giving your best and doing these things. But I definitely say to people, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to mess up. Don't be afraid to take risks and learn. All of those things are learning experiences. And in this game and in life, there are so many people who just want it to be perfect. They're perfectionists. And I used to be that way too. And I learned it's never going to necessarily be perfect and be working on a story or something forever. Just make it good enough. And that helps. Another thing I like to give advice to, like the first and foremost, the advice was, don't worry about sports, worry about storytelling. Your job as a journalist is to be a storyteller. You can apply that to anything, whether it's entertainment, news, politics, um, uh, foreign conflict, anything, local municipality laws, rules, regulations, the stories of just people, just everyday people that we do in news. And when it comes to, gun violence or drugs or whatever it may be, it's about storytelling. It's about telling that story. And that's what our job is. And if you can learn that and master that, and that takes practice, like I said, write as many stories as you can, tell as many stories as you can, to be the best at your job, is very important to do. That's the biggest piece of advice I think I could get everybody. If you could tattoo it on your body, so it reminds you, a la Memento. And then finally, I would say, when doing those stories, and I've been sharing this with a lot of young writers here recently who've kind of reached out for advice or mentorship, is to, how do I phrase this? So let's take a guy like LeBron James just passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the NBA scoring record, which I'm sure you're aware of, right? Let's take that as an example. That accomplishment is amazing, but the story isn't just he's now number one on the NBA's all-time scoring list. He passed the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's now the GOAT, if we want to go that route, the way people are talking with that narrative. That's not the story. And so let's say you were given the opportunity to interview LeBron James one-on-one or something after he broke the scoring record, to talk to him about it. Yes, you're going to ask questions about it, but what I would do, and what I would encourage journalists to do, is also ask him about the struggles along the way. Like the kid who was in high school and was being proclaimed the chosen one, at St. Vincent St. Mary's. That kid, like, what did his struggles look like? What did his dark times look like? Could he ever see himself being the all-time NBA scoring champion at that time? What were the down times looking like? The hard times, like when he tore his groin and had to be out for 2 months. What did those times look like? And don't be afraid to go into those parts of an athlete or executive or person's story, because that is part of the journey as well. It's not just that he got the record, it's the up and downs, the roller coasters along the way. And so another piece of advice would be to not be afraid to ask those questions, and make sure you do, because they are important questions in order to tell these people's stories. And that's what I would say to people. If your job was to write about LeBron breaking the scoring record, it's not just about the accomplishment and achievement, it's about the journey to get there as well.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much. That was some great information.
Yeah.